Donald Trump has said that he thinks a ceasefire in Gaza could be achieved as soon as this week, following talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington.
UNICEF's global ambassador, James Elder, has just returned from his 5th visit to Gaza. And what he saw there horrified him. He met children facing famine and others who told him they had been shot at while they were trying to get aid, food for their families. I'm going to speak to James in just a moment. First, here's some of what he witnessed, and some viewers may find these images distressing.
This is Tala, she's 8. Tala, remember her name. Her mum asked me to share her story. Let's get this story to anyone with leverage to stop this war. These are the children. This is who we are speaking for. 11-year-old Jenna, who yesterday was playing with her friend when there was an airstrike. This is yesterday. She's paralysed from the waist down. This is a mass grave. Just behind me, this is a mass grave at Shifa Hospital. Even in death, people here are not able to do the farewell that is such an important part of this culture and cultures around the world.
James joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Clearly, it's the effect on the children, isn't it? Because let's put aside anything else, you know, the fact that the adults can't get to an agreement. The children are the innocents in this, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, very tough to watch that, Susanna. It's tough also because I'm very conscious now. You have moments like that, but I'm also obviously no longer in Gaza, and there's, you know, little Jenna, who's 11 years old, who's been there for 640 days. I mean, that little girl we saw at the end who's paralysed from the waist down, who was brushing her teeth when there was an airstrike on the shelter she's staying in. As she hit the ground, she was still conscious, and she watched her friend die in front of her. Now, these stories, as harrowing as they are, they're constant. You know, I see every single hospital I go into. I sat with a nurse who starts her day in a tent, and she's the head nurse in a ICU centre. So she's got, you know, 2 or 3 premature babies in incubators. I watch her manually do a hand pump of oxygen because they don't have that oxygen. So yes, it's across the board. It's mums, it's children, and as you rightly say, Susanna, it's ongoing.
Can you tell us what your evidence is for this very serious claim that the Israeli Defence Force is actually shooting children as they queue for food? I mean, that's a very, very serious allegation. That's clearly a war crime if it's true. How do you back it up?
Yeah, unfortunately for me, Richard, I met those children. So part of it is that this aid distribution point is so problematic, bizarrely, not only because we're seeing children shot and wounded there, but because it's trying to sideline humanitarian aid, which had 400 distribution points. So UNICEF, we were part of 400 distribution points. We went door to door for malnutrition. This has been with a deliberate aim, a spoken aim, not mine, but a spoken aim to push people to the south. That's why there are now 4 distribution points.
Can you answer my question?
Yeah, I met a little boy, Abed Al-Rahman. He was 13. He went there. He was given money, Richard, to go and buy bread. But he saw this flood of people moving to one of these sites and he thought, I can get more than bread for my family. I mean, he's watching his mum, you know, slowly losing weight in front of him. I can go to one of these sites. He went there. There was chaos. There was, according to him, and I spoke to at least 15 people who said this, drone fire from above. When I met this little boy, he had tank shell in him. Now, there's only one side to this fight that has tanks. He had shrapnel there in his pancreas, in his stomach. This little boy wanted to tell his story because he, you know, and as he told it, Richard, his dad was in tears. It's a patriarchal society, but he's telling a story about, I just wanted to get food for my mum. On the day I left Gaza, 2 weeks later, this little boy died of those injuries. Died trying to get food for his family because, yes, it's been denied through humanitarian systems that work and is being militarised in these sites. So, unfortunately, yeah, that situation is happening many, many times over.
Obviously, there are 2 very powerful voices in this conflict, that of Hamas and that of the Israeli government. And just to say that the Times of Israel reported last month, internal Hamas documents show the group has been systematically exploiting the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza in order to fund its terror activities. That was according to the Israeli Defence Forces. I just put that as perhaps a sort of explanation to counter the fact that, you know, this idea that the aid system worked previously, that the new system doesn't work. Now, whether the new system works or not, and we've seen dreadful scenes, I suppose the IDF would say, you know, if you've got an aid system where Hamas are exploiting that aid for their own devices, that also failed the civilians and the children of Gaza.
But unfortunately, Susanna, there's two parts. One is that there's 1 million children, right? And Israel will say there's less than 20,000 people in the IDF, in Hamas. So we talk about aid, and we talk about what possible reason would Hamas have for hygiene kits for girls or for incubators for premature babies. UNICEF, we've got dozens of incubators on the other side of the border that are not allowed to go in. Preemie babies, given the stress of mums, are dying because they can't get them in. Water. Okay, so the International Crisis Group says less than 1% of aid is diverted, which is less than Somalia, northern Nigeria. But water goes from the source to the recipient. We have restrictions across the entire Gaza Strip. No one is getting the minimum level of water. So now you've got children suffering from a lack of food and now from a lack of water. This is a collision on their body. So we have meningitis spiking outbreaks. So unfortunately, the evidence is very clear. And then there's the logic of what possible reason can you have to ban oxygen, to ban incubators, to ban all those things that a family and mum needs.
Well, there's an answer to that, actually. It comes from Israel's National Security Minister. He was speaking last Wednesday. I'll just quote him and hear what your response is. He said, as long as our hostages are languishing in the tunnels, there is no reason for a single gram of food or any aid whatsoever to enter Gaza. What would you say to that?
International humanitarian law, Richard, you cannot hold 1 million children responsible for the actions of a terrorist group. It's abhorrent. You know, it's abhorrent that hostages were taken. It's abhorrent to think right now there are hostages somewhere in Gaza. And again, this speaks to why all sides should be pushing much more for a ceasefire. Under a ceasefire, under any negotiations, more than 150 hostages have gone home. Under military means, which has been the preoccupation of this war, under military means it's 8. So a ceasefire lets aid flow, a ceasefire gets those parents out of that horrible scenario. But no level of proportionality, no level of international humanitarian law allows you to do that to children on the back of hostages.
Well, welcome home. I'm glad you got back safe. Will you go back?
Yeah, yes, always. I mean, my job is global, so next stop probably the Democratic Republic of the Congo. There are children suffering everywhere, but always I hope to go back in a ceasefire for so many reasons.
Well, thank you for coming and talking to us. We appreciate it.
Let's hope a ceasefire.
It's coming up to 20 past. I have to say the Israeli Defence Forces have previously said this. The IDF operates under difficult conditions against a terrorist enemy that operates from within the civilian population. IDF soldiers receive clear orders to avoid harming innocent civilians and they act accordingly. End of statement.